Robert Downey Jr. When most people hear that name, the first thing they think of is...
I am Iron Man.
And you probably only heard a little bit about his addiction issues. If you strip away that billion-dollar fortune and that tech genius, what you will find out is that Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr. are the exact same man. So many times throughout the Iron Man and the Avengers series, Pepper Potts, who was Tony Stark's assistant and later his wife, saved his life many times. And the most memorable time is when she took that arc reactor and put it back in Tony Stark's heart.
Is that so hard? That's fine, right?
Oh, I gotta go home. In real life, there are actually several women who saved Come on. Oh, In real life, there are actually several women who saved Robert Downey Jr.'s life more than once. In fact, if it weren't for one woman, he would probably be dead. So today, I'm going to introduce to you one of the most legendary and unfortunate romances in Hollywood between Robert Downey Jr. and the feminist icon via Sex and the City, Sarah Jessica Parker. So in order to understand Robert Downey Jr., you must first understand one very important man, Robert Downey Sr. So Robert's father was a very well-respected underground filmmaker in Hollywood. And when Robert Downey Jr. was just 5 years old, he appeared in his father's movie and said the very first lines ever on camera. And let me tell you, it is some wild shit.
That tornado scared me so much it made my hair disappear.
Have any hair on your balls?
I'm afraid to look.
God damn. Now, back then, people would get away with some wild stuff. And if you look at this from a modern perspective, this is 超级政治不正确 as fuck. And some people might say it's a little bit bordering on PDF. I mean, you can have a 5-year-old kid, albeit he's pretending to be a dog, talk about a grown-ass adult about a pair of balls?
Not a great plan. Hi, this is Mrs. Kopechnik from Sam Ohio. He's like, what the hell are you doing? What time is it, 10:30? Why don't you call me back at noon? I'm calling about your son because we were very concerned. I told him either quit school and get a fucking job or show up every day. Ask my dad.
So needless to say, Robert's father was a super chill dude, and his personality would greatly influence and shape the future of Robert Downey Jr.
I was a drug addict, mainly cocaine and then marijuana. Total insanity.
Didn't your father introduce you to drugs?
Well, let me put it this way. It was such a permissive time.
How old?
Yeah, I was probably 8, 9, 10.
So as you can see, before he could even sing yo button, my man Robert Downey Jr. was taking tokes off some fat blunts, yo. And this is way before even Justin Bieber got in on the game. But I guess that does beg the question, can we really judge or criticize Robert's father? I mean, back then, they didn't have the science and the information that we have now. Now we know, if you're gonna bake before the age of 25, your brain will get very baked. Not only that, but it could practically destroy your entire future.
Or in particular, young males in their teens, early teens and 20s who take high THC containing cannabis, there is a much greater, like 4x increase in probability of psychotic episodes later that don't ever reverse. I think that cannabis has been very beneficial for a number of adults who are through the so-called critical period of brain plasticity, so older than 25. They need some way to quote unquote take the edge off in the evening. They'll do an edible on the weekend, this kind of thing. That is not what we're talking about in terms of psychosis. We're talking about kids 12, 13, 14 taking a, like a bong rip or in a joint or vaping a super high potency THC containing cannabis and just being high out of their gourd and feeling like it was a really good time, doing that 2 or 3 times. And I've seen this over and over again. Their parents reach out to me often, in fact, for whatever reason. And then you hear about this person being 17, 18, there's a failure to launch component, they're amotivated, they're claiming ADHD. They're basically a stoner who relies on cannabis to relieve anxiety and hasn't done much else in the last 5 years, or certainly has not managed to keep up with the mean.
Now, for those of you watching who might be fathers, I'm assuming you might be a little bit like me, where you play some games with your kid, you talk in some funny voices, and you spend some quality time in the name of bonding. But for Robert Downey Sr., the only way he seemed to be able to bond with his kid is when they were both high.
A lot of us did things and thought it would be hypocritical to not have our kids participate in marijuana and stuff like that, so we thought it was cute to let them smoke it and all that. It was an idiot move on our parts, a lot of it, to share that with our children.
But it wasn't just his father who was very open-minded when it came to bonding.
You've said it seems like so much of my past I really don't remember. I grew up in a family that was doing drugs and trying to be creative. Does that describe your family life?
In a nutshell, for sure.
So growing up in an environment like this would mark the beginning of Robert Downey Jr.'s long and tumultuous battle with an addiction with drugs. It would also lead him to get in so much trouble, he would make Justin Bieber look like a model grade A citizen. So do you remember in the first couple of Iron Mans when Tony Stark was constantly finding himself in trouble and his attitude was basically he didn't give a fuck? Well, here is where art imitated life. Because what you're about to see is that Robert Downey Jr. was not acting, yo. He was just summoning his inner 20-year-old and early 30-year-old to say them lines as Tony Stark.
You were found in a hotel room.
Mm-hmm.
You said, I had Valium, turkey, and some strippers.
It was Thanksgiving. The cream and the strippers were constant. It just happened to be Thanksgiving, so there was a turkey as well.
Was one of the strippers dressed as Wonder Woman?
Yep.
等一下齁，钢铁人 and 神力女超人 in the exact same room? Finally, DC and Marvel meet up together, and it all goes down in a hotel room with roast turkey and lots of drugs. But this is only the teaser, yo. This next one comes straight out of Tony Stark's playbook.
But do you remember driving around naked in a Porsche?
Absolutely, it was a blast.
You were driving around naked in a Porsche, throwing imaginary rats out a window?
They were real to me.
So from hotel parties with roast turkey with Wonder Woman to driving naked in a Porsche throwing rats out a window, my man was definitely tripping balls, yo. But this last one takes the cake. And it would ultimately lead to the law throwing the book at his ass.
Do you remember the incident where you ended up in a stranger's bed?
That was my house. Oh, no, it wasn't. It was theirs.
Now, this all might sound like fun and games, but let me tell you, this craziness led to some serious consequences, yo. When Robert Downey Jr. ended up in court again, the judge had enough, and he ordered him to go to rehab. And this is where Robert Downey Jr.'s very close Hollywood friends, Sean Penn and Stephen Baldwin, yes, that's Hailey Bieber's father.
It was he kicked my door down, and the next minute, it's like the door flies off the hinges, and there's Sean Penn in that leather jacket, like, it's time to pay the piper.
So we got in a fight with Sean Penn in the stairwell. You got Stephen Baldwin keeping guard outside.
And when I got there, Steve Baldwin was there, and he told me to sit in the back of the car and put my hands where he could see him.
But these two, along with the police, would work together to help Robert Downey Jr. get his shit together. And now Robert Downey Jr. is about to make the most ridiculous escape ever.
When you escaped from it, did you get out of a window? Is that what you did?
Yeah, I was wearing like hospital blue pants and a Hawaiian shirt. I wasn't very discreet.
Now, this might seem like fun and games if it's Tony Stark in an Iron Man movie, but in real life, the law had so cold at Robert Downey Jr., yo.
Then the judge had broken his leg, and he was so mad that I'd left the rehab that he drove his car with his cast on to go down and sign to have the papers to have a warrant put out for me.
And after getting caught driving drunk and finding loaded weapons in his car, the judge was about to bring the hammer down.
The first violation I did 6 months, and then on the second one, he literally threw the book at me and went for the maximum sentencing allowed.
How long were you actually in prison?
16 months.
Now, Robert Downey Jr. didn't go to just any prison, yo. He went to one of the most notorious prisons in all of California. The exact same prison where they were holding Charles Manson. Not only that, but the exact same year when Robert Downey Jr. was being held in that prison, there was a huge scandal that broke.
Corcoran State Prison, where the FBI was investigating numerous corrections officers who had been accused of staging inmate fights, sometimes wagering on the outcome, and then when those fights got out of control, of shooting the inmates involved.
What is it like to be in prison?
It's an unimaginably awful situation.
So needless to say, this was the last place my man wanted to be, and he commented as such. Unlike the previous clips, my man is not all fun and games and hee hee ha ha in this clip, yo.
At the end of the day, if you're in a life-threatening and really terrible and toxic and awful and restrictive situation, what you have to do is you have to protect yourself and amuse yourself in that order. That's what I did.
Spending time with gang members and gladiator fights and constantly being in danger, my man was going through his very own origin story that you would see in a superhero film. Except in this movie, Robert Downey Jr. is the villain, and the hero is a woman that everyone around the world knows. The one who became the ultimate celebrity female liberation and feminist icon from Sex and the City, Sarah Jessica Parker. So just like I said at the beginning of this video, in Iron Man, Pepper Potts saved Tony Stark's life more than once. And in real life, Robert Downey Jr. was saved by not one, but 3 women. And one of the most important ones was his relationship with Sarah Jessica Parker. You see, these two met on the set of a movie they were filming when they were just teenagers, and they immediately fell in love. And we're not talking about puppy love, yo. These two were together for 8 long years. In fact, this was the first time that Sarah Jessica Parker actually lived with a boyfriend.
You know, he's the first person that I lived with, and it's, you know, no secret that he was struggling, and I had not ever been exposed to that, so I didn't feel particularly equipped. I mean, I had to learn how to be with somebody who was, you know, dealing with addiction.
So anyone who's ever been in a relationship serious enough to live with someone understands very clearly that that is often the person you love the most and also the person you hate the most. Because you get to spend a lot of time and see their character flaws, their idiosyncrasies, and also their odd and weird living habits. And you find out real quick that this ain't just a romantic relationship, yo. This is a goddamn partnership.
Can I move this? This is crazy. It's like a Ferris wheel going. I'm trying to get some.
And Sarah Jessica Parker endured 8 long years with a man who was an absolute drug addict, an alcoholic, and a maniac.
Those were really important years. There's a lot of good memories, but there's also a lot of learned time spent learning about how we survive and at what point, do you stop taking care of somebody. Those are pretty big lessons.
So it's interesting to see. If you look at Sarah Jessica Parker's face as she's recalling these memories that were quite a long time ago, what you see are eyes filled with exhaustion and regret.
On a personal level, what did that relationship teach you?
It, I think, taught me how I love. What's the difference between loving and taking care of people, and what's necessary and what grown-ups should and shouldn't do for one another. And the way I cared for Downey were things that might be more suitable for a parent.
Translation, Robert Downey Jr. was a goddamn child. Teaching her how to love, teaching her what she should and shouldn't have done for someone she loved. It could just be me, but it seems like Sarah Jessica Parker was deeply in love with Robert Downey Jr. I mean, she did all these things for this guy. She was patient, she took care of him, and she lived with him from the time she was 18 when she was barely out of high school for 8 long years when she was fully tsunsoe. And during that time, her love caused her to do a lot of things that she might have regretted. And maybe even Robert Downey Jr. took advantage of her kindness and love for him. And what did she get in return? In an interview with Vanity Fair, she said, "People around him would be dismissive of me, but I had given him stability and tried to create a steady heartbeat that allowed him to show up on time. This made me angry and embarrassed me." God damn, could you imagine being patient and taking care of a guy who can't take care of himself? He's out of control, he's addicted to drugs, and then when you get out in public, you get blatantly disrespected and embarrassed?
Don't get me started on men.
Don't get me started on men.
Don't get me started on men.
I'm curious, for our female viewers who have gone through something like this, share your struggle down below, yo. Now, through this very tumultuous time, Sarah Jessica Parker wanted to break up with this guy. I mean, she had had enough and was willing to walk out the door, but there was one very important reason why she didn't do it.
I think I was naive, but I also felt, I think like a lot of us do about a lot of things, which is like, I can deal with that, I can fix that, I can help. But eventually I felt that the biggest, hardest choice about those kinds of relationships is feeling brave enough to leave even if you're afraid they're gonna die. Because you stay, not because you're in love anymore, you love this person and you're afraid that they will die if you aren't there. Like, I just didn't want him to die.
So now you can see, Sarah was genuinely concerned for Robert Downey Jr.'s well-being, yo. And you need to keep in mind, all that crazy shit that happened back in chapter 1, that happened after they broke up. So I think it's safe to say that she saved this dude's life. Without Sarah Jessica Parker, there would be no Tony Stark. There would be no Iron Man. But at some point, she had had enough. She was tired of being this dude's mom. And as she said in one magazine article, eventually she had to walk away and pray that he wouldn't die. So in the end, she dumped his ass.
I need you.
I need you too. That's what I'm trying to...
now.
And then, just 1 year later, Robert Downey Jr. met another woman, and after dating less than 2 months, they got married and had a kid. Now, I would assume most women who were in the position of Sarah Jessica Parker, a woman who invested 8 years of her youth taking care of a drug addict, enduring embarrassment and shame and disrespect, not only in private but in public, to then see this guy move on and shack up and say I do to a woman he barely even knows, they would be pissed. Now, to be fair, Robert Downey Jr.'s marriage to this new woman lasted 12 years. And you would think being married and having a kid would have some stability in his life and he would get his shit together, right?
No.
Like I said before, all that crazy stuff that happened in chapter 1, Wonder Woman strippers, driving naked, throwing imaginary rats out the window, waking up in someone else's house, escaping rehab, driving drunk with weapons in your car, that happened while he was married and had a kid. And this woman, just like Sarah Jessica Parker, just like Pepper Potts in Captain America Civil War, they had had enough. They were done being this man's mother.
Get him out of my sight.
And Robert Downey Jr. got dumped again. So now, Robert Downey Jr. is broke, he's jobless, and he's loveless. My man has officially hit rock bottom.
Part of the problem is that, I've always felt that I'm just such a hell of a guy that I can pretty much behave in any way I want, and I'm so charming, and I'm so fabulous, right, that it's still gonna be okay. Yeah, of course it runs out. It's like anything, because you're acting like a child, and sooner or later you're gonna get grounded.
But in a moment, this is all about to change, as he was about to meet someone who would change the course of his life forever. So where Robert Downey Jr.'s personal life was out of control, for some strange reason, this didn't really affect his professional life, yet. Because when he filmed the biopic Chaplin, my man was completely out of his mind.
So even during Chaplin, you were on the edge.
Yeah, and there's nothing better than shooting scenes in Vevey, Switzerland, in old age prosthesis, while you are booming on mushrooms still from the night before.
Crazy thing is, this actually earned Robert his first Oscar nomination. And that took his career to the next level, yo. Everyone wanted a piece of Robert Downey Jr. But that didn't last for long, because in less than 10 years, my man went from being on top of the world to being the man that no woman wanted to date and no movie company wanted to hire.
So when someone says, I really wonder if maybe I should go to rehab. Well, you're a wreck. You just lost your job and your wife left you. You might want to give it a shot.
Well, there were a few companies that were willing to hire him, but they had some very strict conditions.
And it's kind of like they take a bunch of the dough up front that I'm supposed to get, and then when I finish the movie and I haven't, snorted half of Bolivia, they go, oh, well, thank you. It's not that we don't trust you. Here's your money back.
Now, this might sound kind of harsh, but having been in the movie business myself, I have to say this is quite fair, because making a movie is just like creating a company. It's like a joint partnership, and if one of your business partners is a raging drug addict who's out of control and might not show up to work, you gotta make sure you get some return on your goddamn investment.
I am actually the least risky person you could hire on a film now, because everyone knows that they gotta keep me in check and hold me accountable, and they don't really need to because I'm doing it now.
So as you can see, my man is really uncomfortable when talking about this, which is why he so often uses humor to diffuse the tense situation, just like Tony Stark in Iron Man. So now Robert is slowly crawling his way back into Hollywood's good graces, and in a moment, something is about to happen that would change the course of his life forever.
I have a picture of you and your girlfriend Susan.
Hi, honey.
There you go.
That's Susan.
And you've gone all kind of gooey.
We were just screwing 2 hours ago.
You met a woman that you're now engaged to. Now any plans on when you may get married?
Whenever she says.
It's up to her, right? Well, smart man. By the
One movie with Halle Berry, and he would meet the woman who would completely turn his life around. Susan Levin, a producer on that film and Robert Downey Jr.'s current wife. Now, whereas Robert's ex-wife and Sarah Jessica Parker were more like his mother taking care of a big baby, Susan Levin didn't take no shit.
I mean, is she pretty strict? Keep you on a short leash? Choke chain. Hi, Susan. I think eventually you fall into somebody who's kind of like, I see that you are a tall order. Let's make it work. Otherwise, sayonara.
According to Robert, she's the one who actually saved his life and his career.
Is it valid to say that she kind of saved your life in some ways?
Well, here's the great thing. Really, any great partner holds their space and lets you fish yourself out of the chasm with a kind of benevolent neglect. It's not that she doesn't give me validation. It's that she does not do what everyone else has always done, which is thought.
She doesn't treat you like a child.
Correct. And unless I'm acting like one.
So Susan wanted Robert to take responsibility for himself. In fact, she demanded it. Otherwise, she was gonna dump his ass before it even got started. So whereas the previous women in his life kind of approached Robert like a mom, Susan approached him as a partner, and she wanted him to pull his own weight. And this attitude kept Robert Downey Jr. off drugs and in line. Now, Susan was strict with Robert because she believed in him. She married this guy when he was blacklisted in Hollywood and could barely get any parts in movies. And after a few years of proving himself worthy not only of the relationship, but worthy of Hollywood's love, Susan recommended him for the role of Iron Man. Now, this came at a period of time when Marvel was almost bankrupt and running out of options, and Robert Downey Jr. was bankrupt and needed some options. And when Susan and the director of the first Iron Man put Robert Downey's name in the hat, needless to say, Marvel had their reservations.
Robert Downey Jr. at that point in his career wasn't necessarily a family-friendly name.
Today is ridiculous, but at the time, it was, whoa, risky casting Robert Downey Jr.
So as you can see, Marvel was a bit nervous, and rightfully so. After all, this guy had a horrible reputation, and Robert was probably the last person they were thinking of putting on a superhero costume.
And we all felt so sure about him on a creative level. Because he wasn't instantly a slam dunk approval, I suggested we upgrade him.
Word on the street is, my man had to audition for this role over 10 times.
Oh, Mr. Stark, you have been described by some as a Da Vinci for our time. What do you have to say about that?
Da Vinci, ridiculous. I don't paint.
With that, we all know how the story ends. Marvel went from being in bankruptcy to being one of the biggest movie empires in the world, and Robert Downey Jr. went from being banished into obscurity to being one of the most recognizable faces in the world. And it was all because of these 3 women. 2 of them spent 20 years taking care of him and keeping him alive, and the final one picked him up and pulled his face out of the mud, told him to pull his shit together, and gave him a second chance. So where Robert Downey Jr. might be Iron Man, these 3 are definitely Iron Women. But that's just me. Let me know what you think down below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you on the flip side. Peace!